Thus is the story of Mistfall, cosmology of the Northern Realms. The oldest tales of the Northern Realms speak of a futureless, barren globe suspended in nothingness, and of two prime powers that descended from the void to shape the world and bestow upon it the gift of life. Some say the divine beings had been separate and different from each other since the beginning of time. According to others, it was when the sun had risen and then set over the world for the first time that the two gods were separated for the first time. One embracing the light and becoming dawn, the mother of day, and the other forever merging with the darkness to become dusk, the night father. Despite their differences, they labored dauntlessly, always on two opposite ends of the globe, enveloping it in clear skies, sculpting mountains and valleys, separating the lands from the seas, and filling rivers and lakes with water. They would also create life, dawn crafting plants and all the creatures that would feed on them, and dusk shaping beasts of prey and all things happy to live under the night sky. Finally, having built a glorious home for their offspring, they went about creating their masterpiece, the firstborn. The work was divided evenly. While dusk crafted his children's bodies by night, dawn would create their minds and souls by day. It was also during the day that she breathed life into them, and as they looked upon the world for the first time, they fell in love with their mother, who they would forever follow, developing an immediate distrust of darkness. And even though dusk would give them with all his love, they would still shun him. The Night Father was heartbroken. Despite his best efforts, his offspring would remain fearful or indifferent, not recognizing him as their creator and protector. Finally, disappointed and scorned, Dusk lashed out as ground in a fit of dark rage, burning his creations with a wrathful black fire, covering the lands in ash and burying the broken bodies of his children under the rock and stone. Silence fell over the world once again, and in the distant dusk could hear the mournful cries of dawn, as even she was not able to give life back to her murdered children. Remembering the pain of his own loss, the Night Father harvested the mercy and hope still lingering in the cold darkness, until he could give it shape and forge it into a moon. And as the moon eclipsed the sun, the mother of day and the father of night were united one last time to work together on recreating their greatest achievement. And so they crafted mankind, gifting it with both their essence in equal measure, instilling human minds with light and darkness, made the God's children truly free, for now they had the capacity to love both day and night, and the ability to choose between the two paths that started from the same place, but ultimately led into two opposite directions. Since the last union, the moon had stood as a solemn reminder of dusk's last act of grace, and some say that it reflects the light of the sun because the Night Father used up all his compassion to forge its celestial body and all of his love for the mother of day to make it yield to his will and eclipse the sun, and that when it all happens again, it will be at the end of days. The Awakening and the First Age. From the day of the awakening, humanity started spreading and conquering the furthest corners of its new home. And as man grew in the light, the mother of day watched her children with pride. But dusk would look upon them with growing disdain, for in those times only few would choose the shadows over the light of day, and those who did were either too weak to make their father proud or so headstrong that they would try to harness his power and use it to their own ends. Bitter and irate, Dusk turned his thoughts to crafting a new race, one that would serve him without question. In the deepest darkness of the old forest, in the forgotten caves under the tallest mountains, he engineered his servants, building their bodies to resemble both humans and the beasts of prey he had made in the beginning. Without Dawn's aid, he crafted their minds with his own essence, instilling in them a primal rage and a desire to feed and to conquer. Satisfied, the Night Father watched his new offspring multiply and grow in strength, with minds focused on an endless hunt. And when their numbers grew, he unleashed them upon humanity. From now on, in the forests and on the edges of civilization, men who would become prey as often, and as they would be hunters. For its way the Night Father's desire to prove that his creation was better than that of him and Dawn. A struggle between humanity and the Beastman would continue for countless centuries. Where children of dusk came to rule, chaos would ensue. With minds set on the hunt, without common enemies, the wild beastmen would fight amongst themselves, forming tribes to war each other, spilling blood over hunting grounds, and falling deeper and deeper into internal strife that would in time leave them open to retaliation. Displeased yet again, the Night Father tried to punish those of his offspring who were first to turn against their own kind, but quickly found out that whatever ill fortune he would condemn them to, it would only make their furry bird even hotter and more savage. Finally, Dusk came to realize the weakness of his creation. While men, made when Dawn and Dusk had labored together, would be free to become destroyers or builders, the Beastmen were condemned to the one purpose the Night Father had forged them for, and it seemed that they all would ever want was the power to hunt and kill and war each other in an endless conflict. The coming of the mists. Growing more and more tired, with his grip on the Beastman slipping, Dusk devised a simple but cruel punishment. The Night Father turned his gaze away from his children, and all the magic they had called upon to strengthen them would disappear. Suddenly deprived of their might, the shamans and chieftains of the tribes called out to their father, but he would not answer. Watching in bitter satisfaction as servants of Dawn started once again claiming the wilderness that had belonged to the Beastmen. But the Beastmen, unable to comprehend the change of their fate, would still call out, craving for their lost strength. Drums beat day and night as the abundant tribes performed dark rituals, trying to win back the grace of dusk by feats of strength and bloody sacrifice. Determined to regain what they had lost, they would call out dauntlessly until something answered. From the far north, from the land where night and day are almost like one, the mists reached out to the abundant children of dusk, first touching the Goran, the mightiest and numerous tribe, filling them once more with the power they had craved so much. But the touch of the mists was far different from the gaze of the Night Father, as it would twist and transform its new servants, and where it had was thickest, even the land itself. Filled with new power, suddenly more malicious and bloodthirsty than ever before, the Beastmen struck against humanity with the cruelty and relentless that had made the human kingdom shudder. But as humans gathered up their strength and finally managed to stood their ground against their old enemy, the cold mist struck at them with a new, even more terrifying threat. At first, there were only tales of ghostly shapes walking the barrows and the dark woods, tales of empty skulls and rotting flesh peeling off bones reanimated by a sinister power, tales of the dead raised from the ashes, and of former brothers dragged out of their graves and twisted by the mists, once again taking up arms, but this time to become humanity's demise. Humanity's initial disbelief almost became its unmaking, as it took numerous villages and few holds to fall before those who had not yet seen the undead to finally acknowledge their existence and start preparing to counter the new threat. Thus, a new order of priests was formed, one that would wield the power of the dawn to specifically strike at what the goddess would find the most unnatural and hideous. Few in number, the Dawnbreakers would lead humanity against the living dead. Initially, a time of desperate battles, epic deeds, and great sacrifices. And so came the Age of Heroes. The Valkyr. Despite the Valkyr being one of the most inhospitable of the northern realms, it was also one of the first to be conquered by humanity in the early days, long before the Mistfall. As if to prove their right to rule the world, the Children of Dawn built their homes in the rocky foothills, on mountain slopes, and deep in the snow-covered woods of the valleys. The northern western part of the Valkyr ends with a cold sea that freezes for the duration of a few of the coldest months of the year. That, however, did not stop the Valkyrians' expansion, making them some of the first people to master the art of shipbuilding. It quickly led them to become explorers and traders, and sometimes, in the case of those few who would worship the ever-scornful dusk, also raiders, feared on every other coast of the known world. After the Night Father had created his own children, the Valkyrians were first to come into contact with them. The Beastmen tribes quickly found out, however, that although their numbers and their ferocity may make them natural predators and hunters, even in hopeless situation, the people of Valkyr would not go down without a fight, and without taking as many of their enemies with them. The Valkyr also one of the regions first touched by the corrupting tendrils of the mists, with its most northern parts influenced heavily enough to change the land itself. It was here that the Mistwalker term was coined, and as the bravest and strongest of the Valkyrians would venture into the mist-ridden territories in search for an answer to the mystery of the mists. And although many have not returned, some say that one woman uncovered a terrible secret, now guarded deep within the dungeons of the Frost Valley Keep. Although the people of Valkyr are truly indomitable, their territories have suffered greatly from invasions of the Beastmen and the ravaging undead, which scarred the land and left hundreds of burned villages and decrepit ruins of old outposts, now haunted by creatures returned from the dead or created by the mists. Now the Valkyr is a house besieged, perilous, and more hostile than ever before. But for as much the mists push its people, so do they push back, never easily broken. It seems that their strength and resolve remains unwavering in the face of the nameless horrors spawned by the mists and the brutality of its beastmen servants. Today, most of the Valkyrians live in and around Frost Valley Keep, a stronghold built between two mountain ranges almost 4 ages ago to stop any further expansion of the mist-driven beastmen hordes. The rest of the people are spread all over the land, inhabiting small settlements that exist in constant danger of being taken by the mists or invaded by its servants. People of the Valkyr are easily recognizable wherever they appear, tall, stout, and broad-shouldered, with strong arms as if made to wield smithing hammers, axes, or broadswords, and heavy, thick shields. In the other northern realms, the Valkyrians are considered giants, for even Valkyrian women often stand taller than men born in less harsh and unforgiving regions. As for the other denizens of the Valkyr, the whole lands, and especially its northern territories, are swarming with beastmen, and almost every old ruin seems to house some sort of returned dead. From reanimated skeletons to wraiths, night whalers, and formidable draugrs. The coldest parts of Alskir are also a home to all manners of frost beasts, animals twisted by the mists and fused with the ice that surrounded them.